The shooting suspect in the Atlanta shootings attended a church that promoted uncompromising views on the role of government and also sex and gender identities, something that could have influenced his actions the day that he decided to open fire in 2 different facilities, killing 8 innocent individuals. So there were excerpts of sermons by the lead pastor of the Crabapple First Baptist Church in Milton. That's the name of the church, and the lead pastor is Jerry Dockery. Now these sermons have been deleted, and when I read you excerpts, you might have a good understanding as to why they've been deleted. On feminism and gender roles, Jerry Dockery said the following in one of his sermons: "Radical feminism has engulfed our culture like a tsunami. We're now striving for gender neutrality, for gender fluidity, you name it. It's just gender whatever you want." And I would say to you that this is a blatant, I will say it one more time, a blatant guidance, direction, and strategy of Satan to oppose and usurp the authority of God. And he also had some pretty strong views on sex and marriage, which I think is relevant to this conversation. He said in one of his sermons, "We believe that God has commanded that no intimate sexual activity be engaged in outside of a marriage between a man and a woman. We believe that any form of sexual immorality, such as adultery, fornication, homosexuality, bisexual conduct, bestiality, incest, polygamy, pedophilia, pornography. I mean, they love thinking about these things, or any attempt to change one's sex or disagreement with one's biological sex is sinful and offensive to God." So this is all relevant because one of the things that the shooter allegedly said to the cops was that he felt this deep guilt because he had a sex addiction. And so I do think it's important to kind of focus on the type of culture some of these churches have, how it teaches self-loathing and hatred over natural urges that people have, over the identities that people relate to. And I know that there is like the hate angle to this as well as it pertains to the Asian community. But when it comes to hate in this country, I do think it's important to kind of pinpoint the various systems or institutions that help to perpetuate that hatred. And I think based on the kind of rhetoric that was used by this pastor, it could show some signs of how religion can play a role.
No, religion played a giant role, and no one will talk about it because they're scared to death of offending religious people. His pastor put poison into his head. Radical feminists are guided by Satan, he said. We just read you the quote. He repeated that it was blatant that Satan was doing it 3 different times. Funny enough, he seemed like a tough guy while he was doing that sermon. After the shooting, that's the sermon they take down. What happened? I thought you said it was blatant. Oh no, now you want to hide your real opinions. Your real opinions are fundamentalist and they drive terrorist activity like this. It's true in all the religions. Hate women, and hate the others, hate gay people, and God told you to hate these people, and they're all directed by Satan. Oh golly gee, did you attack the forces of Satan? I couldn't have seen that coming. No, you do see it coming, and now they put out all this PR marketing horse crap from the church going, oh no, he was not following the teachings of Jesus. Now, mind you, they taught him that Jesus hates all these people and that women shouldn't have rights. And then they said, well, I mean, technically we didn't tell him to murder women, so he's not following the teachings of Jesus. Okay, so look, whatever you think the teachings of Jesus is, the fundamentalist Christians that we have in this country that put this poison in people's heads, they barely follow Jesus at all. But I don't care if you think they do or they don't. The ideology that they put out there is toxic and oftentimes leads to violence. But even if it doesn't lead to violence, it leads to madness. So this guy in his head is like convinced, the shooter is, oh my God, I have a sex addiction. First of all, he probably didn't. He probably was a 21-year-old who liked sex, which is like almost every 21-year-old. But in religion, they teach you, oh, don't be human. Don't follow what your nature tells you. Instead, suppress it until you explode, right? So religion is crap when it comes to that. It is lies. Total, utter lies. There is no sky god watching if you are masturbating to porn or not. But all of these idiots go around saying that to men and poison their minds. And then they turn into incels because they get so bitter and they're so frustrated. By the way, one of those fundamentalists who supports this ideology, and now this is Ben Shapiro, who is not Christian, but says the same exact things. That's why I tell you, it happens in Islam too. It happens across all the religions, right? Shapiro wrote a whole book called Porn Generation, How Social Liberalism is Corrupting Our Future, right? Don't watch porn. Oh, the women are trying to entice you. It's all the women's fault. It's not your fault, it's the women's fault, right? So I'm tired of that horse crap fundamentalist junk, okay? And so yes, it does lead to violence like this.
I got to jump in because finish it though, because I think the second part of that is relevant, right? So there's the first half, which is, oh, these horrible, loose women are going to try to lure you in with sex, and they're going to try to get you to have premarital sex. The second half of it though is, if you indulge, you're a bad person, you're going to hell. And so there's an element that leads to self-loathing, like this extreme guilt, right? And look, there are many casual religious people in the country. And what I mean by that is they might identify as religious, but they're not going to church every weekend. They're not really, enveloped in like this church community. So that kind of messaging might just kind of like roll off their backs. But if the church is your community, right? That's your group, that's your tribe. They have that ideology. Then it increases the likelihood of self-loathing if you have engaged in the naughty behaviors that are obviously natural and human, right? And look, I can say that firsthand, not from religion. I actually, grew up going to Sunday school every Sunday, and knock on wood, I'm really happy that I wasn't taught all of the hateful stuff, right? But in terms of Armenian culture, Armenians are pretty conservative, and it was very well known that like if you're a young woman, if you're a woman who hasn't gotten married yet and you've lost your virginity, no one's gonna wanna marry you. You've been ruined, you've been tainted, you're awful. And when I was a teenager, I totally bought into that. And I remember having like extreme feelings of guilt, when I was a teenager, and teenagers are lusty. Like, what are you gonna do? Right? And I was like, I'm awful, no one's gonna wanna marry me, I'm terrible. But luckily I grew up and realized that it's all BS and everyone's having a good time. So don't hate on yourself.
Yeah, look, no, but guys, no, we're too soft on religion because everybody catches feelings. Oh my God, you can't say that about my fake God. So there are three components to religion. Let's just be honest about it, right? Number one, are there wonderful people who are religious? Of course there are. My hero right now is Reverend William Barber in North Carolina. He looks out for poor people. He's a wonderful moral guide in this world, okay? I've gone to countless mosques where they've given speeches on how you've got to help the needy, you've got to help the poor, and that's your number one directive from Allah, okay? So yes, there are great people, and I hope the majority of religious people are great people, right? Are there people who teach fundamentalism that is absolutely poison? Yes, lots and lots of them. But they say, oh, because of the good religious people, you're not allowed to criticize the bad religious people. No deal, no deal. Fundamentalists suck. They're totally and utterly wrong, and they teach poison, and they sow hatred, fear, and ultimately a lot of times violence in all of the religions. Lastly, guys, for those of you who are good religious folks, who are probably the majority of you, I'm sorry, but the third thing I gotta tell you, it isn't true. It has to matter whether it's true. So we built this God that happens to look just like humans, that has fear and envy and greed and jealousy and all these things that are emotions born out of our evolution. Why would a higher consciousness have the emotions of a particular animal on a particular planet? That's insane. It's not even within billion miles of true. So why do I tell you it's not true, even though I'm breaking some of your hearts, right? It's because truth matters. This pastor and many, many, many other pastors talk about Satan, and they say Satan is real. The guy with the tail and the horns, and then gets out, dressed up in hot outfits on Halloween, right? It's total mythology. It's insanity, right? They convince people that Satan is, and part of the reason I'm on a warpath on this, other than the fact that truth matters, is I've been talking to QAnon and right wingers on The Conversation. You should check out those interviews. You know the number one reason they believe in the insanity of QAnon? Because they say Satan is real. So obviously there's people who do blood sacrifices and child sacrifices and drink the blood of the children, because my pastor told me Satan is real and that's what Satan does. So I believe that a lot of people are doing that. So I want to go and they actually believe it. I know for rational people it seems impossible, but this guy that did the shootings, the Christian terrorist in Atlanta, and let's be honest, if he was a Muslim who said, I did it for my religion, we would call him a Muslim terrorist. This guy's definitely a Christian terrorist, okay? And I'm not afraid to say it because people are gonna cry about it. I'm afraid of the women who are getting slaughtered out there because no one has the courage to say, will you please stop teaching people to hate women to appease your non-existent sky god?
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.